Shalom and welcome to People on the Path. My name is Adam Lowy, and I am the Lifelong Learning Moreh Derech at Congregation Beth Sholom in San Francisco. Each month, I will welcome dynamic guests to discuss, learn, and consider what it means to be on the path. How does an individual's choices impact their path? How do the various communities that an individual participates in change their lives forever? What communities, what unsuspecting moments become the powerful ones that inform personal and professional journeys? Where does one's relationship to their Jewish identity take surprising turns, and how does it spiritually manifest? I intend for the conversation to be intimate, unscripted, and informal. The possibilities and potential will be infinite. The directions, ways, and paths will be explored, discovered, and open. Let us please take a walk together on this month's People on the Path. Before I welcome today's guest, I would like to check in with our senior rabbi, Rabbi Ain.
Hey, Adam.
Hi, Rabbi Ain. Thanks for joining me, as always, on our monthly
Great guest today.
trip on the path. Yes, it is a great guest. And before we talk about our guest and bring in our guest, I'm going to take us back to Tuesday, okay? And I got to say, I don't think I'll ever forget the expression on your face and the raw intensity that you entered our virtual staff meeting with on Tuesday. So if you remember, it was moments before the verdict of the Derek Chauvin trial was announced. And you came in, just as you came in, and you said, "Are we really doing this?" was your question. And I just need to know, tell me, like, what were you really asking at that moment? And then tell me, how are you doing, and how have the events of the past few days impacted you? So what were you really trying to say?
Well, I mean, this happened on January 6th, where I was in the middle of teaching. Well, I was in the middle of teaching my Wednesday class when the terrible events of January 6th happened and they stormed the Capitol. And I kind of missed it. It was like I caught up on it after it had happened, after the fact. So then right before our staff meeting happened, I saw that the verdict had come in for the Chauvin case. And I thought, oh, are we doing this again? We're going to miss this sort of life-changing event in our country. So that was kind of how I was feeling. It was sort of a reminder of what had just happened, where I was in a virtual Zoom meeting and missed what was going on in the world. So that's the first thing in terms of I was thinking. I can't say I'm happy. It's a weird thing. I think a lot of people have been describing relief. Sort of, it's nice that there's justice. And obviously there's a lot more to be done. But I love this country. I root for this country. And when the justice system works, I think it's good for everybody. So that's what I'll say about that.
Thank you. Well, as you know, we have a special person with us today. I am excited to bring her in, and I'm excited to bring you back in a little while to ask your questions. And
this is the best guest. I don't think there's a better guest. If you asked me, who's the one guest I would want on People on the Path, living or not living, your guest today would be that person.
Oh, this is awesome. All right, so no one knows what's about to happen, and I'm excited. We'll call you in a little while, Rabbi, and thanks as always for joining me. So here we go. I'm going to ask my guest to turn on her camera and unmute as I introduce her. It is my honor to welcome this month's guest, Alana Joblin Ain. Writer, Rebbetzin, and teacher. Alana earned her BA from Oberlin College and an MFA in poetry from Hunter College, where she has taught creative writing and literature. Her writing has appeared in the New York Times, Modern Loss, Mothering Through the Darkness, The Forward, My Jewish Learning, Dossier Journal, Crab Orchard Review, and Quarterly West, among other publications. Alana lives in San Francisco with her husband, who, if you haven't made the connection, is Rabbi Dan Ain, senior rabbi at Congregation Beth Sholom, and her 2 children. They are founders of Because Jewish and currently serve Congregation Beth Sholom, where Dan is indeed the senior rabbi, and Alana leads a dynamic, multi-generational women's group, amongst many other things that she brings to our community. Alana, welcome to People on the Path.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Adam. It is awesome to be here with you this morning.
Thanks so much for joining me, and I am really looking forward to our conversation. So I'm going to just start with how are you?
You know, at the moment, I'm doing pretty well. I've centered myself. I have some, I have like tricks for how to do that. I have a candle lit, which smells like coffee. It's called Cup of Joe. I've got some nice grapefruit juice. I have a cup of tea. I have like always out of the shot. It's the same with my car. I have a whole apothecary and sensory delights to center and ground me that are always within reach.
Was that a juice for hot cocoa mug?
Of course it is. I'm always doing a little bit of advertising from our sponsor, Juice for Hot Cocoa. Yes.
Juice for hot cocoa. Enjoy l'chaim. I'm also, it's early in the morning, everyone. We're recording. It's still kind of early. I have my juice as well. And it's so funny, Alana, that you describe this kind of apothecary, because actually later I actually have a question kind of about that. And so I'm so glad that I expected you to be surrounded by items to ground you, because that is something that I've learned about you since we've met and gotten to know each other. So I'm glad you're doing well. I'm glad you've spent the morning grounding yourself and surrounding yourself with things that make you feel comfortable. I wanted to ask you also the kind of the same question that I asked Rabbi Ain. How are you doing based on the events of the last few days?
You know, I feel definitely like that bit of coming down. You know, I think a lot of us don't even realize how anxious and like how much we're holding our breath until the verdict of that trial came to pass. And I felt so on edge. And then even when like all the news feeds and the socials are the collective expression of relief and look at this, at least this bit of justice has been accomplished. Even that, like I even had to put that aside. It's like just so much stimulation, so much building up to this. And, I was with Autumn visiting the orthodontist while this was all unfolding. And I was just trying to be like really grounded, she knows what's going on. And when the verdict came in, I just stopped what we were doing. And I said, this is really unprecedented. This is such a big deal that people saw and recognized what happened. And, like Dan said, it is a step. It's something in the right direction. And of course, there is much more to do. But I do feel like a little bit of a kind of coming down that was really, I think, weighing very heavily on all of us over these past, months, weeks, and then days especially.
For sure. Yeah, it feels good, and it is a relief to finally feel like we're on the right side of this justice kind of question. Not that it's ever a question, but that finally we're on the right side for once. And hopefully it's one of many being on the right side of how this should go and what the kind of what the ramifications of somebody's choices should be, because it was definitely a choice that he made. I also want to kind of ask you, we know each other pretty well. We've kind of been communicating here and there throughout the pandemic. Are you seeing, a lot of people right now are saying kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. Are you seeing that with regards to the pandemic? Are you feeling there's a light at the end of the tunnel?
Light. I don't know if I think because our families are all back east, and it's like, it's not, I don't feel, I think, the same sense of like, okay, now I'm able to drive to, see people still within California, or able to, get together with siblings who are living in the same state. I still feel like there's a little, so that's just one piece of it for me. I feel like there's a little bit of like, okay, I'm still seeing how this is playing out state to state across our country. But I do definitely feel some light. Look, our kids are in school together. And as soon as our kids were able to be back in person at school, I started to see a lot of light. I mean, I saw that we are able to still, even in what would be like, what I hope is the middle, I hope we're approaching the end, but even what would probably still be the middle of this pandemic, I saw a lot of hope and light with just what we were able to still do. I'm an optimist in general. I think, I feel, yes, I feel like we're heading towards something, but I do think it will probably not be all at once. I think just in general, there's some ups and downs and peaks and valleys with something like this. So yeah.
Awesome. All right. So I wanted to just kind of get us presently grounded with like how we're doing right now. And now I'm going to take us back a little bit to understand and hopefully to learn how you've become a writer and a teacher. And I think the Rebbetzin part is a little bit easier to answer how that happened, but I'm curious about what that means to you, what a Rebbetzin does in the community, and hopefully we're going to get to a lot of these things in our conversation today. So I just want to, according to your bio, you describe yourself as a writer, Rebbetzin, and teacher, and I'm wondering if you can tell us or even explain to people on the Path audience, how do you live those various parts of yourself? And how do they intertwine?
They're completely intertwined as far as I'm concerned. Because I guess I'm not actively teaching as a job right now. I am, I lead the women's group, or I think I'm in situations where I hope I'm imparting some sort of knowledge or wisdom or something that's interesting or useful to people. But, I would call myself a teacher, I guess, when I was going to a classroom and teaching a room full of undergraduates and giving them a syllabus and they're turning me in homework. But I don't feel like, because I'm not doing that right now, that is not still integrated with my role. So yes, I've been writing for as long as I can remember. I kept journals as a child. I always wrote. It's such a gift, at the time, but then it's also this tremendous gift as you age and you can look back at these things. It's pretty unbelievable, because I have records of my kind of internal thoughts and things that I was considering from the time I was, 8 years old. So it's pretty, wild to have that collected through decades now. And Rebbetzin, I embraced that term as soon as I learned about it. I did not grow up with that as a term. I grew up Reform Jewish, and I don't feel like anyone was calling the rabbi's wife a Rebbetzin. I never heard that term, to be honest. And then when I learned that it was a term, I thought, oh, okay, this is kind of interesting. And it was a conversation with an artist and his wife, the artist Archie Rand, and his wife Maria, of blessed memory, who died, I think, about a year ago. And she was telling me that she wished that there was a word for like the life's journey and partnership that she had with this artist husband over 50 years, traveling around and kind of supporting their life together, and him and his art. And it was like through this conversation with her that I thought, oh, cool, there is a word. It's Rebbetzin, and I'm going to take that because this is a job and it deserves a title.
Do you ever translate Rebbetzin? I know it probably has an official translation, but how would you describe what that means?
Look, I guess the most basic distillation of it is a rabbi's wife. Now, I think that there might be I don't think this, I know this because people have mentioned to me, I think to some that sounds like someone defining themselves by what their partner does. If there was a word for Dan to constantly identify himself as my husband, I'm sure he would slap it on as a moniker. He loves it. I think it would go both ways. But I think that it means different things in different communities. You know, people ask me that, like, oh, does your community expect you to be, you know, running the religious school or baking all the halot or whatever? And well, no, they don't here at Beth Sholom. I think they are very grateful and excited for whatever role I decide to give to the community. And I do show up because I love doing that. And I feel like my partnership with Dan is stronger and our work in community for my having a role in it. But I don't know. I think some of the questions or concerns that people have with that title, I'm sure have some validity with expectations that might have been put upon sometimes the rabbi's partner that aren't, you know, completely feeling as good as they do to me here. So yeah.
So you mentioned you know, as far back as 8 that you were writing, and I want to explore a little bit, because on People on the Path we certainly talk about what's happening right now,
Right.
but a goal of this program is to really dig into kind of a person's journey along the way, to how we kind of got to this moment in their lives, and how you got to be doing the things that you're doing right now. And so I want to go back a little bit to that 8-year-old version of yourself, and ask you, like how would you describe your life growing up? What was your family like? Where were you born and raised? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So I grew up outside of Philadelphia, right on the outskirts of the city, off of City Line Avenue. It's Wynwood, PA, and come from my grandparents grew up in the city. They grew up in Philadelphia, and I would describe my upbringing as colorful. You've met my parents. They one of the stories that they shared when you met them, they were married and then separated many times, divorced, remarried to each other. So there was a lot of things going on in my home. It was kind of unconventional in that way. But I was a quiet kid. I was a very shy child. I have a brother, an older brother, Evan, and we always were super tight and close. But outside of that, I was shy. I had, you know, a couple of close friends, but didn't really like to talk to people outside of that. So I think that lent itself to you know, some turning inward. And I just remember as soon as I had a journal, I mean, I think it was a gift from someone. It was like a Hello Kitty diary or something. That was just a place for me to go and turn inwards and start reflecting in that way.
When you were writing in the journal, was it kind of like you know, what I would assume is like a conventional journal entry, or were you already kind of playing with words in kind of a poetic way?
I think it was conventional, and I would actually say I took myself very seriously as a child. So as I got a little older, like by middle school, I would use vocab words that were assigned. So an entry in 6th grade would say something like, "I will no longer succumb," underlined vocab word, "to the poor judgment of my friends." Like that was a journal entry when I was 11. I have it because I just look back at it. But I did things like that, you know, very clever kind of. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you grew up Reform.
Yes.
So tell me, you know, with that kind of that, let's say, the unconventional kind of ebbs and flows of your parents' relationship, and I'm sure that had an impact on kind of the spiritual, religious vibe and energy in the home. How would you describe your Judaism and spirituality when you were growing up in the house?
You know, it was one of those things where, you know, we grew up in an area where just so many people, I feel like everyone we knew was kind of, or most of the Jewish people we knew were in the same situation. They were Reform, maybe pretty secular, in this kind of suburb outside of Philly, or they weren't Jewish, and it was like didn't really matter either way. And I was always like moved and interested in the Jewish stories. You know, my mom grew up conservative Jewish, so my grandparents were maybe a little bit more observant than my parents. And my dad's family probably not really at all, though both of his parents were Jewish. And I would say it was just sort of something I didn't think a lot about, but I certainly internalized and connected a lot with the prayers and the stories that my grandmother would read to me from the Torah. But it was not until my family moved. They moved about an hour west of this suburb of Philly when I was 13, before I started high school. And then my brother and I ended up at a Waldorf school where we were pretty much the only Jewish kids there. And that is when it really just, it's one of those things, I guess it could go either way. Your parents take you out of a Jewish community, and even if you're only, somewhat identified or think of yourself as somewhat secular, all of a sudden when you are in a surrounding that has some, like really overt Christian influence and pedagogy, I think suddenly for me, it's just something clicked, like, oh, this is not my tradition. And now I am much more curious and want to be connected to what feels like my tradition. So that's, I would think, where that kind of sparked. And then around the same time, that's when my brother and I went to Israel for the first time. I was 14. And then I started taking some classes after school, just of my own interest. Like I dropped French and started taking Hebrew, because it was really one of those things where I just felt like, okay, I want to know so much more about Judaism now that I'm in this school and place where I feel really like a minority in that regard.
Did when you moved, the hour distance away from where you had grown up, did you all join a synagogue out there?
Mm-mm. No, we did not. Well, actually, maybe we were still members of Mainline Reform, the synagogue where I was bat mitzvah. I guess we were, because I did what's called confirmation class there, because I was interested in doing that at that point, and that was once a week. I guess maybe we stayed members, but we did not go to that place unless it was the high holidays or I was doing, that confirmation. And then I think my parents, I don't recall us having any membership there. After I was in college, my mom ended up becoming interested in Jewish renewal, and then they reconnected with a place in Philly that was affiliated with that. But no, I think in high school, pretty much we were not super affiliated.
And how did you get to Israel? Was that part of a program? Was it a family trip?
Yeah, my grandmother was part of this thing called Women's American Ort. I think it was like through Hadassah or something. I don't even remember what this stands for, but I will tell you that my brother and I went on this program. It was its first year, and it was called the Ort Browdy High Tech Study Tour. And that is what we were on. we were just always thrown into these like random things that it was probably some experiment. We stayed like in some technical school in Carmiel, Carmiel, at this technical school. And it was like 8 Israelis with us and maybe 8 Americans. It was this tiny program. And we actually had to do like 2 hours of, I guess it was biology or something. I don't even know what was going on. We had to do like robotics and things. I'm sure it was funded. It was probably some funded things. They made us do like a couple of hours of, I guess, what would be called science. And then we were allowed to go to the mall and get ice cream and like ride the camels and do the other things. So it was 4 weeks. It was such a strange, I wonder if it still exists. I kind of want to Google it. But we did have that background. Yeah.
And what did you think of Israel as a
14? We just fell in love with it. We're like, this is amazing. This is great. It was such, to not have any real connection with that place and to have never been there. It was our first time there. And my parents had never gone. They put money. I think it was one of those things, they put money since we were in our bar mitzvah thing, and then maybe someone matched it somehow. We got there on this trip, and I loved it. My brother and I, we fell in love with it. And then I went back again when I was 16. I went on the Nisiya, which was for like kind of artists, angsty teens. Yeah.
I don't know that program, the artist.
It's a real special mix of, I have like a real niche sort of Israel traveling experience in my teens, these real specific programs that I was on. Yeah. And then I went back again after college. So yeah, I've been probably 6 times to Israel.
And that you would say that's still part of your Jewish identity, is a connection to Israel, or does that keep shifting?
It is, but I would say the thing that's kind of surprising to me is the last time I was there was right before I met Dan, and same with him. We were both there. I think somewhere around 2006 would have been the last time, or right around there. Yes, right, the summer of 2006. So that was right when we were set up on a blind date. So does still feel like a big part of my life and my identity, but it is not at all overlapping yet with my current, life and marriage and my kids. So that is, a goal of ours, is to get there as a family in the coming years. Yeah.
I'm so tempted to find out about the blind date, but I'm not going to go down that path right now,
Okay.
because I wanna hear more about you and less about you and Dan together, which we're going to get to.
Okay.
All right. So we've talked a little bit about kind of your Judaism, your spirituality as a kid, and you mentioned kind of just that immediate connection you had to writing when you got your first journal. How would you say that arts and expressing yourself through art was a part of your upbringing? Was that something that your parents kind of, that's how they actualized some of their expression, was through art, or did that something that you kind of adopted, emerged from your own choice?
Definitely both. My dad is a pharmacist. I mean, he was always a little bit more probably conventional of my two parents. Though he did have these coloring books I remembered that I really liked. It was these little birds with these markers. But my mom is an artist. She was a speech therapist up until I was about 13. But then when we made this move to the rural area, she kind of transitioned more to being an artist. And also when my brother and I ended up at that Waldorf school, it's just so based in the arts and the humanities. So we really, my brother, who is also an artist, a painter, we really kind of flourished in that setting. And it really, just kind of fostered that creativity for us. So I feel like both, all things. My parents definitely valued the arts and recognized the arts. And as I became, kind of into young adulthood, my mom practiced the arts, and we were encouraged to live our artistic selves. It was definitely valued in my home. It wasn't like it was placed as a secondary thing or kind of an enrichment thing. It was just as valid as any other thing.
When you speak about that, that it was valued, would you say that your parents, kind of stood on any Jewish values that were like, this is things that we believe in, and did they frame it like your family values in any Jewish lens?
You know, I don't think so. I mean, it was the part of the Judaism was like baked in, I guess. We had it from my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, like that. We were definitely Jewish, and we congregated around the Jewish holidays, and we're a Jewish family. But it wasn't. My parents were, at least up until I went to college. I think it was not framed in a Jewish lens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I see you, as I've gotten to know you and kind of seen you in the community, even before I was an employee of Congregation Beth Sholom. I immediately recognized your presence when Dan started. And when did you, were you consciously like, I'm a community builder, or I'm a leader? Was that something that you consciously understood as part of who you are? Or did you think that came more with your role as a Rebbetzin? How do you think kind of your role as a leader, a community builder, manifested? And did that start well before you became Rebbetzin?
I think it did start before I became Rebbetzin. One of the things that was actually really interesting by being at this school where there were not really other Jews is, people asked me a lot of questions, and I became, a little bit of a spokesperson for the Jewish people. And so I had to educate myself more to do that. But I also, I remember very clearly talking to a classmate, and she hadn't heard of the Holocaust. And so I like took it as my personal duty to like educate the school. And then I went on these little speech tournaments where I scooped up trophies and stuff at these other little schools in the Waldorf speech tournament circle. I can only imagine what these venues were. But I felt like this sense that I had an obligation to share knowledge, that I had an obligation to be someone in the community who spoke out on things. I lost my grandfather, my mom's father, to suicide when I was in high school.
Mm.
And I spoke about that. I mean, I don't even know, it surprises me because I feel like I was a very shy child, but by the time I was a teenager, like 16, and I guess we were in this kind of safe, small school, I felt like this sense of importance that I need to speak out or speak up on certain things. And that was a big part of my life. Yeah.
You mentioned your maternal grandmother as kind of the one who led and, let's say, held kind of the Jewish life of your family. How would you describe your relationship with her?
Oh, so close. I mean, I have, there's so many objects here. So I only showed you a few things. That's the trick of this. I can have so many hidden still. This is a prayer book that my grandmother gave me. And this is short, so I'll read you the inscription to it. But this is September 12th, 1995. So it was for my 17th birthday. And it says, "To my dear Alana, I purchased the Siddur when we were in Israel. The only time I used it is when I prayed at the Western Wall in Jerusalem. I hope that your prayers will help you to survive life's trials and will strengthen you through its joys. Now that you are 17, it is time for you to own it. Love, Mom Ethel." And it smells so good. It smells, like an old prayer book. And it smells like my grandmother's house. So we were very close. I mean, she just, the glue, everyone orbited around this woman. So yeah, and I had her, she died only a few years ago. So I mean, my kids met her. My kids knew her, which is amazing. She died when I was 39. Yeah. I'm 42. So I had her for a long time. I had Mama Ethel. So yeah, and everyone knew her. All of my friends call her Mama Ethel. All my brother's friends, Mama Ethel is just like, everyone knows this woman. Yeah.
It's beautiful. Sounds like a wonderful woman. And I'm just always so, I'm so happy to hear when that generation of our kind of matriarchs and patriarchs were connected to us and understood us as people. And it just sounds like you had that really wonderful relationship with Mama Ethel. And I wish I could have met her. That's really special. I want to, kind of now get to this moment of your grounding, right? And so I write some things down before these people on the path programs, and I wrote here, since we met and became friends, I've come to greatly appreciate your positivity and literally the light you radiate into the world. I truly believe that you have a light to you. I almost feel like I see it, I sense it when I'm around you, and I don't get that from many people. And so I believe that you carry something unique. And I want to ask you, have you had a mantra or a phrase or a practice, as you kind of describe with what you're surrounded by? Have you had a practice that has kept you grounded over this last 14 months? Has there been something that you say to yourself all the time? Is there the practice of grounding and having surround yourself with items that give you that sense of feet on the ground, regardless of what's going on around you?
For me, I think that the thing that keeps me rooted is joy and gratitude. And that for me comes from really judging people favorably. I mean, and that's a very Jewish, the Rebbe Nachman, judge favorably. And that, like, I will say, when I'm out in the world, that is the way that I move through life, even with strangers or in stressful situations like the supermarket, which can be stressful during COVID, or the DMV or whatever it is. It's like, I love people, and I feel like most people are good and they're trying their best. And when we just sort of are kind to each other, that's what radiates, and that's what gives that kind of reverberative light.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I uh, I want to bring in Rabbi Ain,
Oh, great.
and Rabbi Ain, would you mind turning on your camera and joining us?
Hi.
Hi, Rabbi Ain.
Hello.
So usually what happens at this time of the program is that Rabbi Ain asks our guests a few questions. And I'm going to let him do that, but I'm going to ask you both to tell us a little bit about that blind date. What was that blind date like? What do you both remember from that? And was it like Basheret right then and there, or not?
That's, Adam, when our kids ask about that, I say it was love at first sight for daddy. And then I grew into it. A little took me longer, but it was definitely a really strong connection. We were set up by a mutual friend. It's actually kind of an acquaintance. So it's one of those things where it's sort of amazing that it happens. Dan was working as the rabbinic intern at McCore on the Upper West Side, New York, and I was finishing my MFA in poetry at Hunter. And one of the women who ran the film series there at McCore, who I really only knew through some friends, so not even someone who I saw a lot, set us up. And it was definitely, I knew that Dan was different, that he was special and different than anyone who I had ever dated before.
Thankfully, she was the only one who knew that. Do you want me to? What do you want me to do, Adam? You want me to answer a question and ask a question? Do you want me to tell about that blind date? I mean, everything Alana says is correct. So
yeah, just tell us, like, what was your perspective? I mean, she claims that it was Bashir at the moment that you saw her.
Well, it was she neglected to tell you that we had met 4 years prior.
We had
when her brother was a student at JTS during my first year there, and she came to Sukkot, and I noticed that she was Evan's sister, and so then I tried to befriend Evan. I would say for the next couple of months. Talk to him about his artwork, asked him about what he was thinking about doing in Jewish, whatever one could do to become friends with someone who has a sister you might want to ask out. But I never got the chutzpah to ask for her phone number. And then we had this occasion in which randomly I was headed uptown, and Alana and her brother and a bunch of friends were headed downtown, and we bumped into each other at the subway station at 96th. And I just jumped on their train heading downtown once I saw her. And we sat next to each other for Indian food. And I tried to impress her with my law degree. And then I tried to buy her ice cream, and she said no. And that was it.
A different rabbi also, it's like a Talmudic, this is like a Torah riddle, because 2 rabbis offered to buy me ice cream, so I had to just say no to any ice cream.
Wait, so this was all before the blind date?
Yeah,
this was 4 years. This is 4 years before the blind date. So then 4 years later, interestingly, I had just come back from Israel, and Alana had not that far come back from Israel, and I had returned to my job at McCore. Arts and culture is very much connected in our relationship. It's not coincidental. We were set up by someone who loves the arts, and I was set up on a blind date, and I just gotten back from Israel, and I was like, I'm not really interested in going on a blind date. And I said, but what's the name? And she said, Alana Joblin. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll take the number. And she gave me the email address, and I wrote this email. I'm sure I still have it, but I'm too embarrassed to dig it up. I wrote this email to her, and I said, oh, that name sounds so familiar. Might you have a brother? Knowing full well it was her, and knowing who I was writing to. But she didn't have any recollection of me. And then we went on a blind date. And we met down at a coffee shop near Irving Place. And it was in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And I got there early because I get everywhere early. And I'm sitting working on my sermon for that I'm leaving for the high holidays. And she says, what are you working on? I said, I'm working on a sermon. She's like, what's it about? I said, well, it's Yom Kippur sermon. It's all about death. And she says to me, okay, well, I think Yom Kippur is about life. And I said, okay, can I buy you some coffee? She says, no, I don't drink coffee. I said, okay. I said, orange juice? She says, yeah, you can get me an orange juice. 15 minutes later, she's like, yeah, I got to go grade some papers. And I said, okay. I was like, let me at least walk you to the train station. So I walked her to the Union train station, and there are like a whole bunch of platforms. And she's going to Brooklyn, and I'm on the Upper West Side. I'm going this way. And I literally did this from across the platform, like, bye, you know, a little, I mean, you couldn't have been any more lame. And yes, you could have, because the following morning, not only did I email her again, but I apologized for the lame wave goodbye in the email the next day. So yes, it took Alana longer to come around than it did for me.
But I came around, and by longer, Dan means like a few months. I mean, he was just like ready to get married.
Well, I proposed maybe 10 weeks into our relationship, 12 weeks, and she kept saying, don't propose. And then I proposed 2 months.
He thought about proposing.
I said, I'm going to propose.
Yeah,
I would say, I'm going to buy a ring and propose marriage to you. And she would say, don't. And then 3 months later, I would say, I'm going to buy a ring and propose to you. And she would say, don't. And then 3 months later, I just proposed to her and bought the ring and didn't give her the chance to say don't. That's the story.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that story and those details. I'm so glad that you two met and that you persevered, Rabbi, and ignored the no and followed your heart, because that's what it's truly about. And Alana has a special heart, I'm sure, and I understand why you realized that I must pursue this person.
Yeah, and I just want to be super clear, like, there is no rabbinic career without Alana. I mean, there's no Rabbi Dan Ain, there's no senior rabbi at Beth Sholom, there's no because Jewish, there's no community bill. I mean, Alana is my, Ezer Kenegdo. I mean, she is the, it all, I think our shul knows that. I think our shul understands that fully well. But this is. I'm often people will stop me because I catch myself saying we. I will often say, well, we think that, and it's just because like Alana and I are just so unified in our religious pursuit. It's something we do together, and it's just, yeah. I mean, there's nobody else I'd rather be on this path than Alana.
Oh. Thank you. The same. That's what Rebbetzin is. Dan did a pretty good job.
All right, I'm going to go, Alana.
Yeah.
You go to you got the rapid fire questions now. I'll see you
Hold
later.
on. Out of all those things that you heard her saying up till now, were any of those a surprise? Were there any questions that you wanted to ask her from the details that she shared? Were any of those unknowns?
I prepared a joke. Okay, because I was waiting for you. I know, look at her eyes. I was waiting for you to say, Rabbi, what do you want to ask Alana? And I was like, should I tell this joke? Is it too offensive to tell this joke? I wasn't sure. The only question I have
probably is too offensive.
Well, we'll take a chance here. You'll get a sense of my sense. You'll get an idea after listening to how amazing she is and all the things that she's accomplished and the places she's been and the communities she's upheld and being published in the New York Times and everywhere, the Forward and poetry reviews and all of that sort of stuff. I was going to come on and ask her what's for dinner.
Ha ha ha.
Wait, I missed it. What was the joke?
I was going to say, what's for dinner?
Community. The community knows. The community knows that there's nothing.
See, he laughed though. He laughed. That's my sense of humor.
It's kind of that awkward laughter. That's that awkward.
That's usually what I go for.
Dinner tonight. So it's whatever you want.
Okay. But no, I know, of course, I know most of those stories. And I hope that, people, like what I hope will happen is Well, Alana is working on projects of her own now that were settled here, that were settled in here. And when we were in New York, she was a professor at Hunter College, and she was in the New York Times, and she was reading at poetry reviews. And I think a lot of that has gone into Rabbi Dan or congregation. And I'm excited now that we've been here for 3 years. We're going to be here for quite a long time to come, that Alana can begin to share her own personal projects, which I think are going to be forthcoming and will connect to a lot more people than merely the folks who are connected to our congregation. Okay, I'll take care of dinner. I'll see you later.
Okay, great. Bye.
Thank you, Rabbi. Alana, I do want to get to the speed round questions, but I want to ask you before that about where can people get a glimpse of what you're writing now these days?
Well, I'm working on a project that I hope I'll be able to share with the community soon, but I have a bunch of writing on my website, which is Consolations. I share it usually in Haluach, or I share it over the socials, if people are on the socials. And people, I think, could find it through Beth Sholom, or I'm probably not fast enough to drop it in the chats, but that's where I keep actually writings that I've started since the beginning of this pandemic. I try to post every couple of weeks something, some sort of reflection, and that's Consolations. And then it also has my clips of other pieces that I've written through the years is connected to that as well. So that's on my site. And yeah, I will be sure to keep the community posted and apprised of new things as they're coming out.
And are you working on something large?
I am.
In addition to the Consolations post?
I am, yes. I'm working on what I think will be a book, and I'm excited about it. Yeah, I don't want to say too much more right now because I'm really at the stage where it's just kind of coming together, but I will share more soon.
Awesome. We look forward to it. I've appreciated the Consolations writings that I've stumbled upon.
Thank you.
And I'm always really drawn to your efforts to connect to kind of the natural elements of the Bay Area in your writing, and I really appreciate it. And yeah, just I'm aware, and I notice how you have really connected to the Bay Area in a way that you're not taking for granted the natural opportunities that exist in our backyard here.
Oh, I mean, it would be, I hope I never do, but we're certainly too new to do that. And especially during this time, during this pandemic, I mean, it's every day. I thank God that we're here. Yeah.
And then one other question I wanted just to ask before we do the speed round of questions is talk about a little bit about being a mother. Like, how does that role fit in with all these other things that you're doing, and how does the kind of the endless surprises of being a parent, how do you ground in that?
I mean, look, my kids, I adore being a mother to them. I really do. I mean, I had a very rocky transition to motherhood because I had a hormonal, what we call the poet's postpartum experience. And that it was a rocky entry into motherhood, but just every day, I mean, these kids, I got some good kids, and they are hilarious. They're so insightful. They keep me grounded and rooted more than anything else. They really are my best teachers. They come with me to the beach all the time. We pray together. We walk into the ocean with our clothes on. We watch movies. I'm hanging out. I joked with someone. I said, I think I've been spending maybe too much time with them because when we were watching Beverly Hills Chihuahua 2, I asked them to pause it when I left to use the restroom. And I was like, if I'm this invested in Beverly Hills Chihuahua 2, like I think this has gone a little too far. But I enjoy their company so much. I love being a mother. It for me, that's everything comes from that. My art, my creativity, I feel has just run so much deeper since becoming a mother.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. And yes, I agree. You have some amazing children who are incredible teachers. Both of them. I'm blown away each week when Shimmy opens his mouth in Shabbat school and has something wise to share with.
I think it's so funny I mean, this is one of these things that's only because of the pandemic that like we're on Zoom and he is sharing this with, kids who are in 6th grade or whatever, and he's in kindergarten and he just sharing his little thoughts on things. And I just think, wow, that's amazing.
Yep. It's not just thoughts. They're deep questions. He often poses deep questions that that nobody's quite ready to answer, or no one. I often try to turn it back to Shimmy and ask him, what do you think? What is your response to that question? Because they're beautiful questions, they're deep questions, and profound. Yeah, and both your kids, super profound thinkers, and amen to the space that you give them, and that you recognize the capability and the capacity that our children can become also our best friends.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm also blessed with similar children in the sense that I can't imagine having been through pandemic with children that were not as incredible, and what that must be like.
You got lucky. You got a good set. Yeah.
All right, so we're wrapping up here. We're coming up to almost an hour, and we finish all people on the path with a speed round of questions.
Okay.
I ask each guest, a assortment of questions from this list, and are you ready?
Sure.
Try not to spend too much time thinking about it. Just lay it out there. What comes to mind?
Okay.
So, what are 5 necessities that you have to have with you on the path?
My family, my faith, nourishment of some good food, art to take in, and something good to smell.
Who would you like to walk the path with? This can be anybody. It can be a person that's living. It can be a person that's passed.
It's Dan. It's Rabbi Dan, everyone. It has to be.
Beautiful. I'm sure he's beaming to hear that answer.
Oh, he's still watching with his camera off.
Oh yeah, he watches. He's watching. He's got control of the record button, so he's watching. And then as a writer and a poet, have you read any great books lately that we should know about?
I sure have. And I need to make more time for this, but one that I'll just hold it up because this is also next to me. I have like 50 things next to me here. This is called The Girls in My Town by Angela Morales. This is a book of essays and it's just beautiful, just gorgeous. Published by a literary press, River Teeth and University of New Mexico. And sometimes you find the most gorgeous things coming from those smaller presses. Yeah. And
the final question. What do you see ahead of you on the path?
God willing, I see my book coming into fruition, which I've been working on. Yeah. I hope so. I hope that that you are allowed, permitted, and not and embraced as your words, your perception of how the world works gets shared with more people, because again I think there's incredible wisdom and perspective that you have, and I'm so glad that you joined me on this show today, so hopefully people can hear a little bit more about those things and about how you see our universe and find your way through it, through the ups and the downs.
And I just want to give you the chance to, is there anything else you'd like to share?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. This is a lot of fun. It went by really quickly. And, thank you for making space for these conversations and bringing them into our community. And just that I love this. I love this community. I love the members of our congregation and our wider community here too in San Francisco and back east who might be watching and all over the place. And I I just want to, I just try to spread the love. That's really what I'm trying to do. I just want to spread the love to everyone out there right now and just keep doing that.
Well, thank you for spreading your love. Thank you for allowing us to walk on your path with you today. People on the Path is shared on the last Wednesday of each month. Please keep your eyes and ears open for the next edition, which will be available on Wednesday, May 26th. This one will be coming out next week as well. And I just want to thank everyone for joining. Alana, thanks so much. Rabbi Ain, thank you. I hope this conversation has been valuable and will support your efforts to find your footing and balance as you continue to navigate and blaze your path.
Bye. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
One step at a time, I encourage you to walk your path with courage, wonder, curiosity, an open mind, body, and spirit. And I wish everybody a Nisiya Tova, safe travels along your way. Shalom and Lahitraot. Until next time. Thanks for being here.